Well, I hope this finds everybody doing well. God bless you guys. I want to say before I get into this plan, first of all, thank you to all of you for just continuing to be the church in the middle of all this. More particularly, I want to thank those of you who participated in our survey, had hundreds of you who did that, of our families. That really gave us some good information, just understanding how you are feeling. And it has informed our decisions here that I'm about to describe for you. Second, I want you to know that even though I'm describing a comeback plan here, our online options will all continue as they have since the beginning of this pandemic. I know there are people who are immunocompromised, chronically ill for whatever reason. You're not going to feel safe getting out as soon as everyone else does. That was reflected in the survey, and I want you to know you're not going to be left behind. Every online option that has been available will continue to be available. We love you. We're not going to leave you behind in that. I also want to thank our medical team, and you'll see their names come up on the screen here in just a bit. These are medical professionals who are part of our own church family. So this was not the health department that put this together. These were not higher ups in government or people that we don't know. These are your brothers and sisters in Christ acting on the data as they understood it and led by two of our own pastors, Jeff Kellogg and Jack Tennant, in helping us put all of this together. There's a lot of things I know. I have no real medical expertise, so you have no idea how thankful I am that the body of Christ is working exactly as it should be during this time. And I'm so thankful for these men and women who come around me and have put together with us this plan that I think is going to keep everybody safe, but also help us to get back to at least some sense of normalcy. I also want to thank the Jefferson County Health Department. They've reviewed everything that I'm about to share with you, and while they can't assure us of any guarantees of anything, it's not really their purview to do that. And also they just sent some additional cautions about things we need to be on the lookout for. But I'm thankful for Dr. Terrence Reedy, who took the time in the middle of what I'm sure is an absolutely insane schedule to communicate with me directly to say, I've reviewed it and you've put thought into this and your team has put thought into this. This is a good plan. And so obviously it's our responsibility, not the health department's, to make sure we're mitigating against this. But I'm very, very thankful for their input in all of that. So let me share with you the values that have put this together so you understand some of the rationale behind some of what I'm going to say. Then we're going to talk about the principles, and then I'm going to unveil to you the plan for coming back. So let's start with the values, beginning with safety. And that continues to be our first priority as we think about coming back here at Covenant. These plans are going to maximize the safety and the well-being of anyone who visits our campus. You say, Pastor, is there a 100% guarantee? No, there is not, and there never will be, truthfully, to anything you do in your life, whether you're driving a car or taking a bath or taking a shower or going to the dentist or getting your appendix removed. There's always going to be risk. But as much as we have been able to mitigate that risk, we have done so out of concern for the safety of our people. Secondly, unity. One of the things that the survey told us was that a large portion of our people, no matter when we open back up, are not going to feel comfortable venturing out just yet. And these are our brothers and sisters in Christ. We don't want to leave you behind. And so though we recognize each of our families are going to have to make decisions that they feel are best for themselves and their loved ones, we're still one body. And so everything I'm about to describe for you reflects that. Every possible measure has been taken to ensure that everyone can participate on an equal level, and that everybody, whether they come back to this campus or whether they continue to watch online for a bit longer, you're going to feel just as much a part of the family as we move forward. That's our responsibility to make you feel that way. Thirdly, all of this, of course, is driven by love. Because we are family, we're going to seek each other's good through this. Nobody on our leadership team, least of all, has come to this with a what's in it for me kind of attitude. We are in this together as the family of God. And finally, we value hope as we provide this. We're going to be realists. We're going to look at the data. We're going to make sober and somber decisions. Every step has been careful and deliberate, but it's also full of faith. And it's designed to help us feel a sense of what I told you at the beginning of this. This is going to end. It's not over yet. I want to stress again, even though we're making comeback plans, we're not out of the woods yet as a planet. That virus is still out there. And that's something all of us need to be aware of. So is it over yet? Nope. But what we want to present is a safe way for you to get the sense that at some point it's going to be over. This is all going to be in the rearview mirror. That's the hope that we have as people of faith. So here's some of the principles involved in making sure that we honor each of those values. Number one, we're going to protect our vulnerable population. So let me say this with as much conviction as I can. If you have a chronic illness, an autoimmune disease, or if you are otherwise a part of a population that has been deemed at higher risk for infection, hear your pastor urge you to stay home still during this time. Please do not expose yourself to any greater risk than is absolutely necessary. No one's going to judge you. No one's going to think you're less of a follower of Jesus if you're merely seeking to protect yourself. And know that we're going to continue to reach out. We're going to continue to broadcast live and minister to you. You will never be left out. You will never be left behind. Number two, all online options for that reason are going to continue for the foreseeable future. And so, not all people who are in high-risk categories are older adults. Some are teenagers, some are children. All of the things we've been providing for you at the departmental level online are going to continue just as they have before. Number three, we're going to make data-driven decisions. And that's something I'm very grateful for, that we have the capability of doing that because of the medical professionals that are part of our church family. Now, there are going to be people who are going to be more cautious, perhaps, than some of these overall plans are going to suggest. And they may say, Pastor, why are we coming back when we're coming back? Should we wait a little longer? Should we put this measure, that measure in place? And let me just be honest with you. As pastor, I have had some of those questions as well for our medical team. In fact, when we talked about the date for opening the facility back up and welcoming the public back, I actually asked the question, is it too soon? And the response I was given was, Pastor, you want data-driven decisions. There's nothing in the data that supports 2 more weeks making any kind of a difference. So that's just one example of what we're talking about here. We're going to be driven by data. Now, there may be some other people who go, well, Pastor, why do we have to be driven by data anyway? Why can't we just move forward on faith? Why can't we just believe God's going to protect us? Pastor, are we demonstrating fear? God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of peace. God has given us, but He's also, in that same passage, given us the capacity for sound judgment. And other places in Scripture remind us that though God has spoken ultimately by embodying Himself in the person of Jesus Christ, though He has spoken finally through the written Scriptures, and though here at Covenant there is no one higher than Jesus, and there's no revelation higher than the Bible, those are not the only ways that God reveals Himself. In fact, those same Scriptures remind us that God has revealed Himself to us in nature, more particularly in the earth, life, and physical sciences. And those with that level of expertise around us here at Covenant have helped us to interpret that data. We need to listen to what God is revealing to us there as well in order to protect each other. That's not fear. That is simply using good common sense. That has been what we have been doing since the very beginning of all of this happening. More details are going to come in an email attachment. It's probably going to come the same day you see this video. But let me give you one other principle here. Deep cleaning. You need to know that prior to any public opening, Covenant is going to have vigorously cleaned all contact surfaces, every available restroom that's going to be available to the public. Not all of them are going to be. We're going to concentrate on some particular areas as we open up and make sure they're vigorously clean. We're going to go over all the seat upholstery in the auditorium with a commercial grade disinfectant. Once we move back into 2 services, the 9 a.m. service will sit in every other row, odd numbers, and the 11 a.m. in even numbered rows. I'll give you more details on that in just a moment. But beyond the concourse foyer worship center and the worship center restrooms, there's not going to be any access to any other part of the facility. Again, I'll give you more details on that. But those principles are allowing us to move forward with the following process. So let me go over that with you right now. Phase 1 is what we're in right now. That's what we're calling assess and prepare. And that actually started on Mother's Day, just this past Sunday, We're monitoring data from area-wide openings. We're seeing the state start to open up already. Businesses are opening. Salons are opening. I think probably sometime this week we'll even have some dine-in restaurants that are going to open. And we're going to be monitoring for any kind of spike in infections or mortality. More particularly, we're going to be looking at that R0 rate that Dr. Marsh, the czar for COVID here in West Virginia, has been teaching us about, to see if the reproduction rate is indicating that there is a spread that's about to happen that is the result of any of these openings. This is our opportunity, once again, to listen to what God is revealing to us in the natural order to determine whether or not it may be safe to move one step further. Now, during this time, all the online worship and discipleship options are going to continue to be available to everybody, and it's still a single online service at 10 a.m. We're going to begin weekly cleaning in preparation to open the facility back up. And starting on May the 17th, this coming Sunday, our elders, our deacons, and their families who are not in high-risk populations are going to be encouraged, if they feel comfortable, to join us back on the campus. And we're going to do that on the 17th. After that, we're going to take a look at the data. If the observations are favorable and our medical team is okay, we're going to proceed to the second phase, which we're calling the dress rehearsal. That's going to last 1 week on May the 24th. This is when we expand our invitation from merely our elders and deacons and their families to Team Covenant and their families. Now, overall, that represents about 150 people plus their families. You say, Pastor, that's a lot of people. Well, one of the things that the survey told us was that roughly half of you intend to continue staying home. So what we're talking about here is probably no more than 75 people, and really not even that many. That's going to give us a really good test run on May the 24th, not only to monitor movements and to see if we've missed anything, but to follow up on that to see if there's any other mitigation measures that might need to take place before we invite everyone back. Now, on the 25th of May, we will make, as best we can, these things are changing a lot, but as best we can, we'll make a final call on whether to proceed to phase 3. And if we choose to do that, phase 3 will begin on May 31st. That's when we're opening the building back up to everyone. Anybody and everybody that wants to come. We'll also, for safety's sake, go back to 2 services at that point, one at 9 a.m., one at 11. We're going to ask you to sit in every other row. Okay, so let me go over some of those safety measures for you at the moment. This is the welcome back phase. All right. Number 1, it's going to be family worship every single week for a little while. We're not going to open up Kid Men, and I'm going to tell you why in just a little bit. Parents with small infants, you can use the cry room. 9 a.m. attendees, when you come in, you'll be directed to odd numbered rows. And you'll sit in those rows so that the 11 a.m. attendees can sit in the even numbered rows. Basically, they're sitting in a fresh seat, which again cuts down on any potential for infection. Furthermore, we're going to ask you to register your attendance. So if you already have the Church Center app, you can do it through that, but we're going to have a link set up where you can go, and it's going to be in this video as well. Really simple process. Give us your name, give us the number in your family, your number of loved ones who are coming, and tell us whether you're coming to the 9 a.m. and the 11 a.m. That's going to help us with 2 things. Number 1, it's going to help us know who to anticipate coming so that we can direct traffic in the safest manner possible. The other thing it's going to help us to do is that in the unlikely event that we have someone become infected and they trace it back to our location, we can alert the rest of you so that you can make the best decisions for your family's own protection. Okay, so we're going to ask for family worship. We're going to ask you to sit in particular rows. We're going to ask you to register your attendance. Here's the big one. We're going to ask you to wear a mask, okay? Now, remember what I said earlier. Every decision we've made is a data-driven decision. Here's what our medical team is telling us. If I wear a mask, it's not really for my protection, okay? If this were just about my personal protection, I'll be honest with you, I would oppose any requirement to wear a mask because I think people are adults. You ought to be able to make that decision on your own. But it's about more than that, brothers and sisters. It's about the fact that if I'm infected as a 48-year-old, rather healthy individual, there's a good possibility that if I do get infected, I may not even present any symptoms, but I could pass it on to others. And if I'm wearing a mask and I come within 6 feet of another person, which is going to be likely as we're moving back and forth in the congregation, or if I'm singing, and we're going to sing, okay? But if I'm singing without a mask and those droplets are just going everywhere, it's going to increase the chances that I could infect another person. So when you step inside this facility, we're going to ask you to wear a mask. Now, look at me. I love you, okay? There's been a lot of drama over wearing masks. I get that some of you don't like them. I don't like them. I don't like them. Told my wife just yesterday going into California Tortilla, I don't like wearing this thing. But it's necessary at this point. It's not like a seatbelt law. It's going to go away. Guys, a year from now, we're not even going to be talking about this, okay? But for the moment, we need to do this, all right? If it makes you uncomfortable, if it feels smothery, once you get seated and you're facing forward and you're not talking and you're not singing and you got a lot of space between you and your loved ones and others and you want to slip that thing off and hear me preach, you can do that. But when you're up moving around, or especially when you're singing, when you come into this facility, please put that thing on because it'll help protect us. Now, here's the other thing too. Remember, I said this at our drive-in service on Easter Sunday. You don't want to be that family that causes our medical team to look at me and say, Pastor, we've created an unsafe environment and we're going to have to shut it back down. So just hear me. We're not trying to mandate. We're not trying to be big brother. And we're not the government. We're your brothers and sisters. We're asking for your help and your cooperation to help us by wearing a mask. Attendance will be limited to 25% of capacity. Based on our total capacity, we don't think that's going to be a problem, particularly when we consider that alongside the fact that a lot of you are going to elect to continue to stay home. And let me just remind you again, all those online options are available just as they were before. That's phase 3. Now, phase 3 is going to continue through the month of June as long as nothing major changes. If we get more favorable observations by the time we get to July, then on the advice of the medical team, we're going to proceed with the following ministries, and we're going to have to determine these dates later. Student ministries, so Pastor Joe's getting geared up to do that. And again, even in July, if you're a teen and you've got a chronic illness or there's some reason you don't feel comfortable, or parents, you don't feel comfortable, the online options will still be available to you. Celebrate Recovery. Summer sports camps. Now that's different from Upward because a camp means you're not going to have a large crowd gathering. And on-campus small groups. Those are things that we will look at bringing back in a very measured capacity in July. Here are the things we don't have a timeline for yet. Now I want to stress, no timeline doesn't mean they're not coming back. As far as I'm concerned, these things are coming back, but we're going to have to take some extra measures. Covenant kids, covenant women, covenant men, mostly because of the food, Upward sports, and in-home small groups. Now, for those of you who open up your home to small, look, you're adults. We're not going to be anybody's hall monitor here, okay? You just need to know you're not going to be doing it with the blessing of your pastors and elders, and we would encourage you to consider the wisdom of gathering in homes when this thing's still out there. So just be very, very careful of that. Now, why would we put these off? Well, it's just because they're higher risk events. Let me give you one example from Upward. Back on the 15th, we had a worship service here, and we had an Upward celebration service, a trophy distribution service that was going to happen with food and everything else. We struggled long and hard over that because that was around the time that once we trace back now, we realized that the infections began to really start to threaten our area. And while we proceeded with Sunday worship, we ultimately made the decision and we thought, well, maybe we can go ahead and have the ceremony, but we just tell them don't have the buffet bar. Don't do the food distribution because of the common instruments and that sort of thing. We ultimately decided to call it off for two reasons. Number one, there are not two of those, there's just one. And so you're packing hundreds of people into a very confined space with recycled air. And secondly, because there was a psychological effect of this. If I have, for example, a 75-year-old man who's chronically ill or has some kind of, well, just by virtue of being 75, he's in a high-risk population, and I say to him, dear older brother, we're going to have worship this morning, but you can stay home and watch us online, and I think you should. I can talk him into that, probably. But if I say to that same 75-year-old man, oh, and by the way, we're going to give your 12-year-old grandson a trophy, and you really can't be here for that, I've put him in a really difficult position that might actually encourage or even coerce him to come into an area that's unsafe for him. So just so you understand what's going on the inside of our minds and our hearts here, the desire to protect our people. Now, you may go, well, Pastor, where's the faith? Why can't God just protect us from this? And again, I would tell you, God speaks to us through general revelation. And what the data tells us at this point is God's way of protecting us. Listen, I'm going to just send you a warning right now. People who tritely dismiss what's going on, the real level of the threat of this virus, with this syrupy sort of, you're living in fear, God will protect us, I'm not worried about it, are biblically ignorant people. You ever met somebody that knew just enough of the Bible to make them dangerous? That's who those people are. They may be wonderful people, they may have good intentions, but they're ignorant, and the advice they give is deadly, potentially. You need to understand, God reveals himself to us in this way. I don't fear my children playing outside, but I'm also not going to let them play in the bypass where these big trucks come by, because I got good common sense, and God has given us that. So while we're still in the middle of this, and so that we can put our focus where it belongs, which is on this community, and so that we can protect this community. Brothers and sisters, we got to think about the fact that what we decide to do here doesn't just affect us. There's a town 1 mile from here, the total population of which is not much bigger than our entire church family. If we do something irresponsible, it's going to affect them. And as your pastor, I am simply not going to allow that to happen. I hope you understand that, and I hope you hear my heart. So with all of that said, let me give you one final word here about how it's going to feel when you come back. Because let's just be honest, it's not going to feel the way it did on March the 15th when we walked out of here. Number one, it's going to feel transitional. That's the word I've chosen to use. Some of my pastor colleagues have said new normal. I'm rejecting that word. I understand what they mean by it, but I'm rejecting that for this reason, because there ain't nothing about this normal. And so I'm just not going to use the word normal, because I don't want us to get used to this as though it's going to be something that's with us for years and years to come. It's not going to be. But it is a transitional moment, and we need to think in the short term about long term what we want to see here. So the masks, all of that, I just want you to keep the term transitional in your mind. This is not going to last forever, but for the moment, it's how we're going to move forward. Secondly, it's going to feel proactive, because what we're doing is mitigating out of love and protection, but we're also moving forward, which means number three, it's going to feel like we're getting some momentum. We're not cowering in our homes, all of us at least. We're not, and those of you who are staying at home are not cowering. You're doing the best thing you can do and the wisest thing you can do. But as we put these plans in place to be proactive, you're going to start to feel like the wheels are turning, like we're going to come out of this. Well, that's because we are. We are going to come out of this. But the most important thing you're going to feel here, even with the masks, even with the bathroom queues that'll probably be set up, people cleaning behind you, contact surfaces, whole joint smelling like a hospital, there's something that's going to override all of that. You're going to feel the presence of Jesus every bit as much as you did when you left here on March the 15th. We forget sometimes, I think, the stories in the Bible that remind us that so often God doesn't remove the trouble that we find ourselves in, but he does meet us there. I think about 3 Hebrew men, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. If those names aren't familiar to you, it's because once they were brought into captivity, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar renamed them with the pagan titles Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And as friends of Daniel, they were ordered to worship an idol. They flatly refused, and they were thrown into a furnace, a fiery furnace. God didn't spare them from that fate, but a fourth man met them there. When the disciples were out on the Sea of Galilee in Mark chapter 5, they had a storm catch them by surprise. And we talk about Jesus calming the storm, which we believe he did, but we forget that for a time, he didn't step out on the bow of that ship and calm that storm immediately. In fact, he was taking a pretty good nap in the middle of all that. God doesn't always spare us from some occasional hardship, and many times he's teaching us through this how to love each other and how to love our community. But know that even in the midst of these times, I have pastor friends of mine who pastor much larger churches, and around the country, one of the things they've told me is, well, I don't really want to come back until it feels exactly the way it did. Well, I love them. I think they have great intentions. I think their hearts are honest. I just reject that mode of thinking, because church is not always supposed to feel like Disney World every single week. Sometimes we're going to have to go through some hard things together. So I'm not going to wait until everything can be exactly the way it was before we come back, because we're the body of Christ. We're not a weekend entertainment venue in Vegas. You don't come for the experience. You come for Jesus, and you come for communal worship with each other. And we're going to be reminded in these coming days that even in the midst of some of these difficulties and some of these measures that even me think to be rather inconvenient, that we're going to continue to love each other. We're going to continue to worship Jesus, and God's going to be mightily glorified, just as he has been. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for your faithful participation in this body of believers. We're here for you. Reach out to us anytime you want, and may God bless you as we move forward. Pastors and deacons, I hope to see you this coming Sunday, Team Covenant. Mark your calendars for the 24th if you feel like you're able to get out. And for the rest of you, I will see you on May 31st. I've missed you, and may God richly bless you.